How's it going, guys? I hope you are all doing well out there today, wherever you are in the world. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit excited about this one. It's my great pleasure to introduce you to the 2CP module by Synergy Amplification. If the name didn't give it away, the control layout might. This is a tribute to the very famous Mesa MKIIC Mark II C+ amplifier, used by countless people. Metallica, John Petrucci, I think John Sykes used one at a point, Steve Lukather back in the day. There's loads, but they're the first couple that spring to mind. It's an extremely rare amp now and climbing in value every day. It's one that I've dreamed about owning one day, but I think the way the prices are going, that is looking extremely unlikely. And this kind of scratches that itch. It solves that problem. It's a really faithful reproduction of that circuit for your Synergy rig. The Mark II C+ and most of the Mark series actually are really flexible amps, but they are quirky. There's two channels, clean and a distortion, and they share some things which getting the sweet spot just right can be a bit of a mission, but there's some incredible sounds out there ranging through like crystal clean, nice bluesy breakup, classic rock, and then right through to really tight metal sounds. So I want to take you through the controls and to some extent the signal flow through the module. It will take a minute, but I think it's really important, especially if you're not familiar with the Mesa Mark series amps. First of all, on the clean channel, the green channel, you've got volume 1, master 1. That's your input gain and master volume for the clean sound. You've then got bright and shift. Bright adds a little bit of sparkle on the top end, and shift seems to be some sort of mid boost type thing. You've then got bass, middle, bass, treble, middle, and presence, your standard EQ, and then you've got a graphic EQ which can be applied to both channels. Although this works well on the clean channel, I think it's most important for sculpting your overdrive sound because of the way this works. So when you move to the overdrive channel, this input gain is global, so this will affect how much signal gets pushed into the distortion channel. Likewise, it goes through the tone stack here before it goes into the lead drive. So the tone stack doesn't function exactly how it would on other amps, although all amps differ. This tone stack is pre-overdrive. So it's more about sculpting that signal into the overdrive channel. So you'll see that you can tighten things right up by reducing the bass, and as you move the EQ controls, you'll actually add gain or reduce gain. So it's, again, quirky, but it's quite useful in some respects. So once you then go through to your lead drive, you've then got a bright and a lead shift, again, a bit of a mid boost. And then you've got your graphic EQ. So the fact that you sculpt it with your classic tone stack, the magic of these amps seems to come from pushing a load of mids in the preamp and then carving them back out with this graphic EQ. That's sort of the magic Mesa thing. If you notice when you look at the Mark series amps, the EQ is always doing a V shape. It's because the preamp's got a ton of mid-range in it, and then you sculpt it out. And I like to roll the bass back to keep the all sounding tight, and then I add the bass back in on the graphic. Then you've obviously got your lead master there. So let's crack on with some tones now. It's an amp you set with your ears, not your eyes. It's not an amp that everything at 12 o'clock sounds brilliant. You've got to spend a bit of time dialing it in. So I'm not going to start with everything at midday. I'm just going to show off some of my favorite tones, do a bit of tweaking. And then at the end of this video, I'll play a loop and tweak all the controls so you can see the full travel. This is a clean sound, cleanish sound I got dialed up on the first channel, kind of breaking up, a bit bluesy, sounds like this. And then one thing that's really cool is the shift control on the first channel. It gives sort of a mid push, boost the gain a little bit seemingly. So it gets more round, more full, and great for that bluesy kind of breakup. You can get some pretty crystal clean sounds out of this channel as well. If I lower the input and increase the output and add a bit of bass, that's the thing, as you sort of turn the gain down, you probably want to add a bit more bass back in. You can get a nice clean sound. And so you can get it really clean. So because this is a global input gain, you could get it cleaned right up if you're using higher output humbuckers and things like that. I'll just show you what the EQ's doing on this kind of sound. So I've got it kind of breaking up on the clean channel. If I take the EQ out, you can hear that with the shift control in, it's kind of honky, but it's a really sweet preamp sound. And then using the EQ kind of to carve that back out again, it's a really flexible setup having this. Like I said, quirky, but very flexible. So you can find a breadth of clean tones and breakup tones on this first channel. I'll take the preamp gain up a bit, drop the master, and see how crunchy it can get. So it can get pretty raunchy, to be fair. Taking it back a bit, I'll show you the kind of effect the EQ has. The mid control is fairly subtle, and I think this was pretty inherent with the original Mark series amps as well. Top end adds a nice bit of bite. And then you've got a presence as well. I'm plugged into the Syn 30 today, which has a presence control on the power amp. So there's sort of two presences going on. So this tone stack for the clean channel works like you would expect. However, if we now move to the overdrive channel, you'll see that the bass needs to be pretty low. If I show you, so we're cascading through from this first volume through the EQ and then into the overdrive. So if I add bass, it gets kind of flubby and not tight at all. Because you're pushing a lot of bass into the front end. However, if you back it off, it gets really tight. So you're sculpting that, and you're not pushing a ton of low end into the front of the overdrive. Likewise, the top end adds sizzle, but also adds gain. So showing off the controls you've got available, you've got this lead shift, which again adds sort of a mid character. I personally love it up all the time, but I'll show you what down sounds like. So where it's sort of reducing the mids, it's not as tight or percussive, it becomes a bit looser. And likewise, I like the bright on as well. The bright will obviously get less effective as you turn up the lead drive. I think you just like to push a lot of mids and top end in the preamp, and then sculpt it with the EQ. And the EQ's doing a lot. I've got the classic Mesa smiley face, but reduced a little bit to my taste. But you can hear how different it sounds without the graphic. So it's adding in low end, some top end, and taking out that honkiness. Although the graphic is really handy for making things nice and tight, if you want more of a rocky type sound. If you take the EQ off, that front end mid-range thing is really good for sort of a singing Dumble-esque kind of lead sound. So if you back off the top end going into the circuit, pump the mid-range a bit and add a bit of bass for fatness, you get a really sort of singing woody kind of lead sound. So I've put it back now to my preferred settings, and I want to show you the interaction between the volume 1, like the input gain, and the lead drive, because depending on which one you raise and lower to get your desired amount of drive, the character actually changes. So here we go. So yeah, depending on which one you raise or lower really does change the feel. I imagine it's coming across to you on the video, but it's more of a feel thing. If you've got to bear in mind that obviously dialing that kind of thing in, if you want to switch channels, you've got to come to a compromise between the clean kind of gain and what you're pushing on the distortion channel, so that everything kind of marries up nicely. The beauty of this EQ here is that you can have it in for both channels, off for both channels, or auto, which will put it on for the red channel but not the green. So you can always sculpt things specifically for the distortion channel, which I think is a really cool feature. One thing that I've been asked to mention about this module is the EQ has a little LED above it, which is actually a clip light for this EQ. Because the EQ comes after these volume controls, this amp doesn't have a master volume, so these are my masters. However, some of the Synergy stuff does have a master volume, so you can push these quite high. As a result, you will clip the EQ section. It doesn't damage the module in any way, but it will probably sound fairly undesirable. Because you sculpt a lot of the bottom end, or at least I do, sculpt a lot of the bottom end out before it hits the overdrive channel, it also means it backs off incredibly. So I'll give you an example here. And that was just using the guitar's volume pot. A lot of amps that push a lot of bass in the front end, you struggle to back off because it just doesn't clean up with clarity. It gets kind of muddy and weird. But this does it beautifully, especially with the lead drive, the lead bright cap on. Just going to tweak the overdrive channel now for more of an overall kind of rocky tone. So with the lead shift down, I prefer it without the smiley face. Again, I really like the bass control dropped really far off for this, around 2. And when I've looked at a lot of people's settings for the Mark series amps, that's sort of what they do as well. You can hear it sort of fuzzes up quite early. Yeah, really cool. Really great for that kind of tone. I just love the interaction between this sort of pre-EQ and the graphic EQ. Under the fingers, it's got a really... it's a really difficult thing to explain because it's kind of liquidy and smooth, but still really tight. And I think that's quite a hard combination to get. But this has got it in spades. And again, between that input volume and the lead drive, there's a variety of tonality in there for sort of how much you want to push in to the drive. I'm not explaining it very well, but between those two controls, varying the levels of them, obviously, and coming to some compromise with the clean channel, you can get some really cool tones. Because of where that tone stack is pre-drive, using the EQ controls, you can really tighten things up, really tight and percussive, which makes it great for lower tunings. I've got a PRS 7-string here. Please forgive my 7-string chops. However, I wanted to show you how much that kind of tightens everything up. So if you hear as I lower and raise the bass control, it gets flubby and then tightens right up. And then if you push mid and treble, you get even more sort of percussive attack. And you'll hear when I take the EQ off, it's really doing a lot. Yeah, there's loads of mid content in there. But obviously where you've cut a lot of the bass in the preamp, it could do with a bit of a bass boost. Stick that on. This module can really do that super tight percussive djent thing, which I can't do, but this module can. So if you push a load of treble and mids in the front end, back the bass all the way off, take out some input gain, and I've got this guitar now in the middle position and kind of coil split, and it sounds like this. So it's that kind of Tosina bassy slap thing again, which I cannot do. But you can boost up some drive and it still stays really clear and precise. And then back into humbucker mode, you get that tight, fat rhythm sound again. I'm now going to cue up a loop into the amp and tweak all the controls individually so you can see exactly what they're all doing. Thanks for hanging out with me today to check out the new Synergy IICP module. I am personally a massive fan of this one, and I don't think they'll be getting it back. I just think it's got a really unique character to it, and it's insanely flexible. Yes, there's quite a compromise using the shared controls between the two channels, but I just think it's a really unique kind of sound, and I can see why the 2C Plus models go for so much money now. But it can be yours for whatever price these cost. If you enjoyed this video or any of my other stuff, please look at liking, commenting and subscribing. It all really helps me out. More Synergy stuff coming soon, and I'll catch you in another video. Cheers, guys.